being, I think we're shedding light on a matter that I think is so pertinent and important and that needs to be dealt with at some point in time.
Wa alaikum salam, Sister Nafeesa. It's true. It's an issue that we hear about all the time. We hear that, like you mentioned, the two stories, the two options, and it's very rarely that you hear of people who actually say, you know what, let's actually end this and let's take a different angle and try to do the things differently.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's why we were so passionate about sharing our story, because we come from years of trying to heal and mend what was wrong and find different tools and skills to be able to communicate and resolve conflict differently. And when we found something that worked and is continuing to work, we felt it necessary to share something really, obviously, very personal, very, very private. But we understand the value that we'll add, and that's why we are here.
And that's why I'm so excited and I'm so looking forward to this discussion. Reason being, as I said, there's so many couples out there that are literally in exactly the same situation that you're in. It's either the husband or the wife. And, as the time is going by, the situation is not getting any better. It's actually getting worse. What's happening is a lot of the times, I think people shove something under the mat whenever they're experiencing a situation and think that it's literally just going to go away. And it's not.
Absolutely. And I think for the better part of our marriage, that was the mistake that we made. And in retrospect and in hindsight, we can look back and we can pinpoint all of the mistakes that we made in terms of the way we communicated, in terms of the way we managed conflict, the way we were just so quick to shove everything under the carpet because we were too naive to deal with it or too overwhelmed to deal with it. And then there's external triggers that we don't manage well. And that's what we did for a long time. And it took a lot of work. It took hard work. It took a serious commitment to ourselves individually and to our marriage to be able to speak here confidently.
Well, what sort of challenges did you face? The reason I asked the question is because I want our viewers and our listeners to understand that each one of us has those challenges. I don't think there's one person that we can refer back to that doesn't have a particular challenge in their relationship. But, speaking to Sister Sumaya Hussein earlier, she's a relationship coach, and she spoke to me. I think a lot of us have this myths of these relationships and this perfect romantic movie kind of situation. And then when the reality hits us is when we don't know how to deal with the situation.
Yes, I think there's in a way we tend to fall into the trap where we fall into a cycle, and that's what happened with us. I mean, I read up on this. You hear about the cycle of abuse. You hear about how it goes from the build up and everything, and you find yourself actually reflecting back. And I found myself reflecting back and find myself stuck in this pattern. And I said, I don't want to be there anymore. How do I break this? And that was a challenge, is to identifying for myself what was the things that I needed to do for myself to overcome this and figure out why do I get so angry at times? How do I deal with that better? How do I manage what is triggering for me? Identifying in the situation what actually caused the outburst. And I think that was a challenge. It was very, very challenging.
And I think if we just go back to the fundamentals of relationship, there is no relationship or marriage that will be absolutely perfect or free of disagreements or free of conflict. I'm sure every married person can agree on that.
Most definitely.
And I think where there was a huge defining moment for us was when we both wanted to manage conflict differently, because obviously the way we were managing conflict was not serving us. And not just because of his abusive tendencies, but because of me being a serious trigger for him. We both were triggers for each other. And I think what we were both able to do is we were both able to reflect on how we as individuals weren't managing conflict.
When you say triggers, was it the frustrations that you were going through? I'm just trying to understand.
There's so many different triggers. So I'll give you an example. I used to have a real problem not implementing boundaries in my life, and not just between him and I, just in general. And as a result of me not implementing boundaries well, I would get overwhelmed and frustrated and take out all of that frustration on him. And I would act as a trigger because I'm overwhelmed and I'm exhausted, and I allow these external irritations rock the core of our marriage. And then also we have like these, it's a very simple concept, but when you think about it, it's actually really, it's something that most women go through. I was a career woman before we had kids. And then I left my job to be a full-time mom. And alhamdulillah, I thoroughly enjoyed it and I really, really loved it.
Nice.
But he was going out to socialize, but actually he wasn't. He was going to work. But everything became a competition then. Who worked harder? I was staying up all night with the kids. And I think we needed to, I think in marriages, what we need to stop doing is we need to stop being in competition with each other and realize that if you're in a marriage, you want each other to win. I want him to win and excel as a human being and as my husband. And he's already an incredible father. And I know he wants me to excel as a human being, as a wife and as a mother. So when we stopped being in competition with each other anymore, and when we started to support each other, because I think that's where a lot of my resentment came in, was because I had traded. I would want to trade places with him all the time because he had this life that I didn't have because I was stuck at home. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense, and I think a lot of couples, especially now through COVID, have been going through this issue, and I don't know if you've experienced it, where they feel like they're living past each other. You live in the same space, but you're not living together because each one is dealing with their own frustrations, their own challenges, and their own situations, not realizing that there's somebody else there with you as well.
That completely comes from an absence of communication. When the lines of communication are severed, then that's how it feels. It feels like you're living two parallel lives. And we didn't want to do that anymore. We didn't want to live parallel lives. We wanted to live lives in union, and we wanted to, and I don't know how you could elaborate on that. Because
so yeah, the COVID thing was
I
the
mean,
COVID thing was, I think, something that the COVID was, lockdown was tough. I mean, I work in the IT sector, so I've been at home. I've been at home 24/7 for almost 10 months. So and it's something I can understand that, we live past each other. I was in my meeting, so I'm walking around with earbuds the whole day. I'm in my meetings with this person and that person, and she's, because I'm there, she's expecting me to be responsive to her. And I think it was a big challenge. And we found that at that point in time was communication was critical. Communication was critical, and we needed to over communicate almost to a point, so that we were not stepping on each other's toes, if I could say so.
Yeah, I think it's about understanding each other's situations, because I think a lot of the time.
But how would you understand without communicating?
Exactly.
So that's why we
having to sit down and discuss the issues and try to find the relevant solutions for it.
And that's a very solution-focused approach, but not everyone thinks that way. And we needed to step out of our hurt and step out of our pain and step out of all of our frustrations.
How did you do that, Johara? Because a lot of women would sit down and I mean, speaking to so many women during this period of time, I'm relating to their situations where they sit and they say, I'm so hurt, I don't want to speak to him. I'm annoyed by him. I can't handle the situation anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with him. This is what you hear. This is avidly going around on a general consensus.
And I can understand that sentiment, but my healing started when I started life coaching, and that was a few years ago. And in me becoming a life coach, it required me to do a lot of introspection and a lot of reflection and deal with my own stuff. And alhamdulillah, it so happened around about the same time, that's when Taahir realized that he didn't want to perpetuate the cycle of abuse, and he started working diligently on himself. And it comes with a lot of self-awareness. It comes with a lot of uncomfortable conversations that we had to have with ourselves.
Is it something that you did on your own, or did you have an added support structure?
So we did that on our own. Like I said, my journey started when I was introduced to life coaching, and he's done his therapy.
So from my part, I mean, of course, we've spoken about her what she's done in her healing, and I think that was when I reached out and I said, you know what, I don't want to do that. I want to change something about myself. There's something that's wrong with me. I said, it was taking accountability And that's something that we stand by for is in our marriage is accountability. I took accountability for action. And I said, you know what, I need to go and find help for myself. So that's when I started looking for help. And I looked and looked and looked and looked some more. And unfortunately, in South Africa, there's nothing of the sort. And it was quite concerning to me because we find ourselves in a country where GBV is quite a big problem. And
it's absolutely huge. I mean,
it's huge.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, actually spoke about GBV during COVID-19.
Exactly.
When we were sitting in such a second wave, he just referred back to GBV and exactly what is going on. And, there's so many households, it's actually scary that are actually going through these situations.
No, that's very, very true. And then I looked at it myself and I said, at the end of the day, I love this woman. She's my wife. I love her with all my heart. But I keep perpetuating a cycle that is harming her. And I don't want to do that anymore. So how do I break that? How do I get, because I need help. She doesn't need to, yes, she needs support in terms of her healing, but I need to get help to sort my issues.
And this is my biggest not that I'm attacking you, but how would you get men to actually acknowledge that? Because in a lot of cases, you find men are not willing to accept that. They're not willing to accept the fact that they are the cause of certain issues. I'm not going to say everything because everybody's not responsible for the entire situation. But what advice would you give them? Because a lot of them would say, no, there's nothing wrong with me. She's the problem.
You know what? I've been there before. I mean, I've been there before. And that's it comes with a lot of self-introspection and a lot of, I think my therapy helped a lot, Johara mental therapy. And in therapy it was, and I know it's like in our Muslim Indian community, it's a bit of a stigma to go to for Muslim men to go for therapy. And
what sort of therapy did you go for?
I went for, it was psychology with a psychologist. We went and I unpacked some of my traumas from earlier on in my life when I'll use that term loosely because it wasn't a trauma as such. It wasn't. It was just some things that happened in my life that had a significant. That might have not seemed significant at the time, but had a significant impact on my life later on. And it helped me understand that when she says this, that's what caused me to go whoa, and I just see red lights. And after understanding that and saying, you know what, this is what is actually causing that to happen, it helped me understand. And then next time she said it, I was like, okay, now I can handle it better. I can handle myself better, and that's all I can do.
She's possibly calling out for help and reaching out to you, and you're not seeing it as that. You're looking at it as a threat and saying, "Oh my word, this woman is nagging. She's just asking for way too much. She's getting demanding." That's what a lot of men look like in
I think what it was.
You think so, man?
No, but it's true. I think, you know what, I'm not the best example. I think
you are.
No.
I'm going to be honest with you. I hope there's a lot of men listening to this podcast this afternoon, because for me, I think it's imperative for people to understand that, you know what, after we're human beings after all, right? And we are going to err. But it's not about being, in that space where you're carrying on making those same mistakes time and again. It's about how to move forward and how to change yourself for the better.
Precisely.
And you've realized that through your life coaching.
Yeah, that was exactly it. And also we've identified that in our culture. Woman getting help, she'll always be told, just make sabr, or just, be a good, dutiful wife and things like that. And I didn't share with enough people to get that kind of response.
And a lot of people say deal with it.
And maybe I didn't want to share people because I didn't want to identify myself as a victim of abuse. But also, in our community, we don't have men that want to admit that that they have problems. So what we're trying to do here is more than empowering women, we want to empower men to let them understand that there's a different way to manage your triggers and to manage your anger. And if you can identify it, you can get the help that you need, because you can love just because we've undergone this journey doesn't mean that we don't get angry, and doesn't mean that we don't have disagreements. It just means that now we manage our anger differently. Now we manage conflict in our relationship differently. It's not dysfunctional anymore. Now we actually get through a disagreement or a misunderstanding, and we get back on the other side and we say, hey, that was, pretty good. And we celebrate the times that we overcome something that could have been really, really catastrophic, because we think that abuse is ongoing every single single day, and it's not always like that. Sometimes it happens once a year, once every few years, because of a paramount misunderstanding or miscommunication, because there were so many minor things that was excluded from the conversation, excluded from conflict management, because we're too afraid, or we don't have the skills, or we don't have the communication tools to have these uncomfortable conversations.